So the poll question is, do you struggle with self-doubt? And the answers are yes, no, or it depends on the day and circumstance. So we'll give it about another 15 seconds. And it looks like we have 17% that said no, they do not suffer from self-doubt. And 83% say it depends on the day and circumstance. And I think that I definitely fit into that category as well. Next slide. It is my great pleasure to introduce Heather Barron. And Heather is this incredible life coach that can work with you one-on-one and has all sorts of resources to support you. I've actually had her work with me during this COVID crisis, and she's been an extreme help. And then she also has Luminous ceremonies, and she's also a writer and a speaker. And you can reach Heather at luminous-life.com. So please help me welcome Heather Barron.
Thank you, Jamie. It's an honor to be here, and it's been a joy to be on a couple of the Power of We sessions. I think there's just such rich sharing that happens during these. So thank you for having me on again. And I am excited for what I'm going to learn. But before I get to learn anything, I'm going to walk through what I have to share with you all. May I have the next slide, Leanne? So I think it's awesome that 83% of us said it depends. It's even more awesome that you never struggle with self-doubt, 17% of you. But those of us who did put that it depends on the circumstance, that is a very common thing. The stories that we can tell ourselves may be self-limiting. They may be about low self-worth and about other crippling beliefs, or they may be about empowerment or capacity and self-actualization. And those of us who put the 83% know that depending on the circumstance, we can tell ourselves which story we want to be telling. So why don't we always choose to tell those stories? You know, there is a lot to be said about the stories that were told to us very early on, when we didn't really have a broader perspective of the world, when our world was just our immediate reality of our childhood. A lot of external lives could have been told as stories, and maybe we've accepted those as our internal narrative without realizing it. But here's the beauty of it. We can learn to unhook from these stories. We can learn how to disconnect from those, even though they show up depending on the circumstance. They may be the knee-jerk reaction, but we know how to, we can learn how to unhook those. And that's what my presentation is about. May I have the next slide, please? I love this image that Jamie chose, that sense of changing our inner narrative and what that can feel like, how that can feel like a burst of sunshine when we realize we can unhook from stale, heavy, debilitating old stories with new stories that we've learned are actually more true about who we are. May I have the next slide, please? So here is a little bit of a process that I've learned, and it's in my blog. You can click on it to get more details. I'm actually going to use this part of my blog and read through it a little bit with some additional pieces just to make it more real for us today. I'm going to start first by asking everybody to close your eyes and see if you've ever heard any of these stories as your own. They usually present themselves in the I form. And so I'm going to read them in that form, and I'm going to go down and just see if any of these resonate for you as having presented themselves to you. Oh, I can't believe I did that. Oh, how could I be so stupid? I should be ashamed of myself. As long as I look like this, I'll never deserve love. I will never be smart enough to own my own business. I'm such a fraud, and someday Everyone will find me out. I shouldn't take up so much space. Oh, I'm being a burden. Maybe I should be quieter. I'm not creative. I don't have anything to add. And the stories go on and on. So if you have your eyes closed, you can open those. So the first step in this process is to pay attention. Become aware of the stories that present themselves. They're very unoriginal, actually. In fact, there are some that many women will say, oh, well, that's part of being a woman, or that's part of being a man, or, you know, we can even culturally contextualize some of these stories because they've happened for a long time. They've come from a lot of different directions, whether it's movies or TV that we've seen, or just stories that people told us over time. I'm not good at sports. I'm not, you know, really very active, or the stories go on and on. So pay attention, become aware. Which are the stories that feel like they're yours? And I mean the negative stories, the stories that feel like they stop you from trying something new. They stop you from sharing an idea that maybe could make the world better. They stop you from living a purpose-driven life. Get to know those stories. And I recommend journaling in everything that I offer, because then you can write them down, start to notice them. And then the second step that I bring people through is imagining life without these old stories. And Byron Katie, who does something called The Work, which you can find at thework.com, she has taught me a lot about how to uncover and unhook from stories. One of the things that is most powerful about her work is that she asks people with a specific belief that you're holding to imagine who you'd be without the thought that I'm too stupid for this, I'm too fat for this, I'm not good enough for this. Imagine life without that thought. And usually this is especially helpful with the thoughts that come the most frequently that are negative. So I invite you to close your eyes and think of one of the beliefs that I just mentioned that maybe resonated for you, you've heard in your own head before, or you've said to yourself before. And ask yourself, who would I be without the belief that? Who would I be without the story that? And fill it in. Just take a few moments to imagine yourself never hearing that story again. How would you feel? How would your heart feel different? Maybe you would hear your heart. How would you feel in your body? How do you feel in your body without the story that? So I'm just going to read a couple that I wrote down. Who would I be without the story, I'll never be good enough? My shoulders would be less tense. I would feel like I am enough right now to do what I need to do. I would feel more relaxed. I would feel love present right where I am, rather than something I have to fight for in the world. Who would I be without the story, I have to work hard in order to feel self-worth? The knot in my stomach would loosen. I would feel less agitated being away from my desk and my work. I would feel greater ease as I do what needs to be done. I'd be able to enjoy time off work with my family instead of always being distracted. I would feel a sense of peace regardless of how much I am earning. So those are just a couple of examples of walking through that process. And really it's a practice of embodiment, which I love. Lori does so much work with this. And I do this with my clients too, but that embodiment. How would I feel without the story? Who would I be without the story? Whatever that negative inner narrative is. So then the third step of this process is to identify the story that we want to live. So if we can figure out who we are without this story, then that's a beginning of what life could look like without that story. And we identify what are the things that we would try. How would we feel more relaxed and present to ourselves, with our loved ones, with our clients and customers? And to get clear about that, write it down. What would that story of your life look like if these other negative stories were unhooked? Then we need to disown the old stories to make space for the new ones. I call this cultivating the observer and investigating your stories. Don't take anything at face value just because it puts the name I on it. You can begin to cultivate the observer, and I'm sure many of you already have developed this, where you observe your thoughts about yourself, about others, about your day, about what's going on. That you cultivate the observer who asks the question when you think a quick thought, is that true? And again, Byron Katie's work is really helpful with this, because that's the first and the second of 4 questions that she has people ask themselves about these stories. Is that true? Can I know for certain that it's true? And just that level of doubt, becoming suspicious about the thoughts that come to us, gives us a doorway to freedom from limiting thoughts. So disowning those old stories that we ran through before is a process of practice. As they come up, you get to say, this is not mine. You get to choose which story you're learning to live into. What is the story that frees you up to bring your gifts to the world? We can become aware of these aggressive stories that come to us, and we have the right to say, this is not mine, and to make room for what is mine, and to do the things that are ours to do. And the final step of this is to claim that new story. So affirming and practicing what we want to experience. Affirmations are powerful because they're a stepping stone of choosing what we want to fill the old space with. What are we replacing these old stories with? Because part of the reason this is so hard is we've practiced these old stories for so long that now we need to practice much more these new stories to replace the old ones. When we affirm the story we know is rightfully ours, or that we wish to experience, we're claiming, practicing, and living our way into a new story in our life. And for me, one of the most practical and powerful ways, and everybody has a different mantra. If you don't have one, finding yours is a really great idea, because this is a very simple way to just have those affirmations present. It's amazing how when you find the new story that you want to live, you can put it into 2 or 3 words, or even just one key word that you're replacing those old stories with over and over and over again. So I'm going to invite you into my mantra, and I've shared this before with people. Go ahead and close your eyes. This is a practice I use whenever I'm especially going into a new and uncertain situation, or if I feel a sense of nerves or anxiety about something that I need to do. This is my practice, but I also practice this throughout the day when those old stories pop up. For me, taking up too much space is a story that comes up a lot. And so that idea that I can take up the space that is mine, this next practice is what helps me the most to get right on top of that negative internal narrative, unhook it, and replace it. So if your eyes are closed, I put my hands over my heart, and I would invite you to do that too, because I get very stuck in my head, and the feeling of my hands on my chest helps my body know to drop in to where my heart is, that heart wisdom. Go ahead and take a nice deep breath. And you just keep taking some nice deep cleansing breaths while I walk you through this. I belong here. I belong here in this moment exactly as it is, in my own skin, exactly as I am. in this place and time with everything that's being presented exactly as it is. I belong here. I am ready. I am ready for whatever is mine. In this moment, I am ready to be present to it. I am ready to listen for what steps are mine to take. I am ready to be responsible for what is mine and to let go of what is not mine. I am ready to face the challenges that will help me to grow, to lean into them, to move through them, and to learn from them. I am ready. I am not alone. I am not alone because right here, closer than my very breath, is love itself. The love that has made me, the love that guides me, the still small voice that tells me what step is the next right step. What is the next right action? I am not alone because I am here with myself, and I will not betray myself or abandon myself. I am not alone because all over the world, there are people just like me listening to their hearts for their role in helping humanity, in loving our planet into a healthier place. I am not alone. I belong here. I am ready. I am not alone. Take a nice deep breath, and whatever is true in that for you, let it take root. That is the practice that helps me unhook my stories. And when you find your affirmations, and maybe you already have those, it's as simple as hearing those stories, disowning them, and choosing what is yours. Next slide, please. So this is just a little summary quote, which will be in our final PDF that goes out to everybody. Next slide, please. And here are some resources. I know I mentioned the work by Barron and Katie, very powerful process. And they actually have a hotline of people who know how to walk people through this process so that you don't have to do it in your head and get pulled out of being present to the work. And it's free. You call in and people help walk you through the process. It's one of the most powerful tools I use with my clients, and it's been phenomenally healing. I'm in awe of it all the time. The Enneagram is, for lack of a better word, a type of personality typing that helps people to understand what their filters are, which is why we can each seem to have stories different to each other, but when you step back, the stories are really unoriginal. They fit whatever our personality type seems to be. And then a couple of articles that helped to inform my blog. Thank you so much, everyone. It's an honor to be here with you today.
Thank you, Heather. And Leanna, if you would do the next slide. I just want to say that Heather really has been so helpful to me during COVID. I really had panic attacks, not unlike the small businesses that I work with, because of all the uncertainty and also the economic inequities and social inequities. So Heather, thank you from a personal level for all your help. And I leave you with one of the quotes from her blog.